It gives me great pleasure to be here. And first of all, I want to thank and congratulate the organizers. This is an unbelievable event, and I'm so glad that so many people came together, in fact, from different continents. So, without wasting much of time, I'm asked to speak on some of my experiences. So let me give you a panoramic view of how I got introduced to Master EK and how the seeds were sown, but it took some time for them to sprout, and how over a period of 55 years now, how the Master works through me in a number of different ways. I was a high schooler when I was first introduced to Master EK through a direct disciple of his by name Krishna Swami. So I was introduced by him, and somehow it was such an intense attraction. People said how common he was among people. It's not the right statement. In fact, this is a very good example of how Gopikas got attracted to Lord Krishna. You cannot describe them because there's no language for that. People try in poetry and all that, but there's no language for that. So, and I will tell you how intensely attracted I was. Even that was an understatement. Parents were very afraid that I wouldn't be going to school. In fact, they tried very hard not to let me go to Master EK. But I used to escape. And I remember 74 was the year that was my 14th year. I remember that year I secretly ran to Master EK to take classes in Sanskrit, Vedas, Rig Veda, homeopathy, astrology. I think I took all of them that year. And H.S.M. Raju and Satyababu asked me to bring my certificates here, but they were signed by Master EK. I got the first prize. In all those courses, in fact, in that year, 1974, I was given those certificates, and they are still there in my library at home. But that attraction was so intense. I remember going to Andhra Kana University Convocation Hall, where he spoke. I remember going to his house once, very early in the morning, ran away like an insane Gopika. Right? That was a period of immense depression. I was from a very poor family. Immense depression, immense anger about the society, immense desire to know things. I was number one in school. I was number one in my engineering college too subsequently. But that's a different matter. So that desire attracted me to him. And I was exchanging notes with some of his direct disciples recently. In fact, I think I remember that convocation lecture that Master EK gave in every detail. And I will tell you how later, slightly later. So I remember going to his house one very early in the morning when nobody was there. He used to do the prayer puja first and then go to dispensary for free medicine, medical help. So I was there, the only one, in addition to Master EK. Master EK was doing the prayer in his usual undershirt. I was sitting there, and then I remember him giving me a very long smile. And I couldn't do anything, I couldn't say anything, and I was shy. And in fact, my parents used to characterize me, you were an angry little kid. There is a reason why Ramana Maharshi and Master E.K. are known to be catching people's souls through the looks. Meenakshi, the actual meaning of Meenakshi is the eyes of the fish. And people think that those are beautiful eyes, therefore people say Meenakshi. No, that's not the real fact. Fish hatch their eggs with their looks. So Master E.K. and Ramana Maharshi used to hatch people's souls through their looks. So that look, that smile I got that morning has been fresh in my mind for these past 50 years. That's not an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration. So I did take just about everything. In fact, I used to run to him early in the morning. I was telling a while ago to learn yogasanas. He used to teach yogasanas along with a Swiss person by name Louisiana. So it was an intense attraction. And that got cut off in a very predictable to me, but in a very painful manner. So because there used to be very few engineering schools back then at that time, and engineering was a very glamorous profession at that time. And being number one in my school, I got into Kakinada Engineering College. That was the seeds were put in a very fertile mind, and I moved to Kakinada, and I was physically out of touch. In fact, mentally, I thought I was out of touch. And I got my 5-year, back then it was 5-year engineering. It was 5 years, and I was number one in Kakinada, and so I got master's admission at Ohio State with full scholarship. That was 1982. 5 years, and then 1982 to 86, my first marriage. I married twice. My first marriage was in 1986. So that was 5 plus 4, 9 years. Nothing to do with master's work, nothing to do with anything in Visakhapatnam. Never visited Visakhapatnam, never. There is a deliberate reason why I'm saying this, because I see a lot of children. You don't know how master works, and that might be please an example. So I was number one at Ohio State, and I was treated extremely well. And back those days in 80s, during Ronald Reagan times, we used to enjoy tremendous freedom. I was known to be loving freedom. I fell in love. I got married in 1986. And then the interesting part of it is I did not know what happened in 86. There was a lecture that Master E.K. gave, which I still remember probably 50% of it. I can give it to you right now. That was the imprints that a 14-year-old could retain. Please keep that in mind as I move on. People will absorb things like a sponge. Of course, it is karmic as well. There are two types of proximity that a master could give. One, a darshan, another, a touch. The two are different. The two are different. In fact, Master E.K. at that time, because I was persuading Mr. Krishnaswamy aggressively as a 14-year-old, you should come to my house. And Krishnaswamy used to say, no, Master is too busy to come to your house. It's okay, you're enjoying his talks and all of that, secretively. Why don't you eat at that? No, I wanted him to come to my house. In fact, Master E.K. did come to my house one evening. And I remember exactly what happened during those 15 minutes that he was there in my house. Every detail of it, the Mangala Harati that was given to him reluctantly by my parents, of course, by others in the neighborhood. And then the puja, the prayer that he gave, he was he never did things because he wanted to do it. He was looking for nature to tell him, this master to tell him. A little child spoke to him, Master Garu, puja cheyandi. And then he always starts with the humor, no puja cheyandi. And then after that, he got up himself and then he did it, practically obeying his master in that little kid. Long time later, I asked my sister, I only have one sister, I asked my parents, do you remember master visiting? They had no clue. That was darshan, this was touch. The two are different. So the touch is like a seed sprouting. So those seeds were implanted when I was 14 years old. In the 1986, I was repeatedly thinking of ponder on this. That lecture that Master E.K. gave once, that was after he gave the awards to all the 14-year-olds for astrology and all those classes. He brought the book, Ponder on This, written by Alistair Bailey. And he was referring to that book and he was talking about some stuff which Master E.K. used to effortlessly go between English and Telugu, by the way. He was such a great speaker in English. So I remember that and ponder on this. In 1986, it was playing repeatedly like a cassette player, and I was so annoyed by it. And I went to Ohio State Library, and then I remembered Alistair Bailey. I said, what must the master be talking about? So the ponder on this was the first book that came into my house. I think master came to my house. And then I read it. And then I became a student of Arcane School in 1986. And then Philip Ludgers of Switzerland joined at the same time, I was later told. And then I read Alistair Bailey's books first before Master E.K.'s books. And then both Philip Ludger and myself, I think, left around the same time, Arcane School, because we found it too dry. Too dry. And slowly, and then I read From Intellect to Intuition. So I finished my PhD at that time, and then I became a professor, a young professor. I could indulge in some extra reading in the libraries. So I remember going to Lucy's Trust conference once in New York, Arcane School students. I was the only Indian, looking Indian at least. I think I was the only Indian in New York, that conference. So I stood up. I don't remember the exact question. I stood up. I asked a question to the speaker. It was more like an academic conference. I asked a question. The speaker did not answer my question, but instead asked me, are you a student of Master E.K.? And I was shocked. What did I ask you to reveal that? I said, I knew him. I don't think I would call myself a student. I was impressed, I was mesmerized by him at one point in my life as a teenager, as an angry little kid. I later asked him, what did I reveal to you that made you think that I was a student of Master E.K.? And I'm not going to go over that conversation, but he said that there were a few words that reminded him of Master E.K. in how I first checked the speaker. And it perpetuated that thirst to know what it is. And then I did not know Master E.K. left the physical body in 84. And then I went to India in 1993-4, and then I asked for Master E.K. He used to live in this place, and I asked a bunch of people, and I knew Satyababu very closely. I knew C.H. Chandrasekhar very closely because we were contemporaries. And I knew that there was a person by name Parvati Kumar, but I did not know anything about him when I was a kid. So somebody referred to, there was the work continuing with Master KVK, why don't you see? So that was my introduction to Master KBK in 1993 or 4. So what follows later is probably more important from a Western living point of view. And I spoke about this in a few churches. I spoke about this in India too, although not in the auspices of WTT. Only because I move around in a number of different groups by virtue of my professional connections. I became a dean in 1990s. Now I'm a provost. But at that time, the way the thirst has been satisfied was quite interesting. That's the reason why when we put the seeds in the mind of a 14-year-old, they will definitely start. And that's Master's plan, and that's the way Master works. Master works in 1,000 different ways. I think it's good to exchange some of these experiences. Therefore, we know the possibilities are there immensely, growing in young people's minds. There were, as soon as I entered with a very deliberate, conscious intent. In fact, I got my house expanded to have a meditation room, and I have a full-fledged rhythm going on at that time, in spite of the struggles in my personal life in a number of different ways. But the rhythm continued, and then it was quite interesting how Master works. There is an interesting word called cutoff that Master used to use. And Satyababu used that word cutoff in his books too. Slowly, you will find that relationships expanded in one area and previous relationships were cut off, almost imperceptibly. In other words, you don't even know that they were being taken away from you. And then there were inconveniences, tremendous crisis in your personal life, to a point where I got my divorce. Right around the time that I expanded this house, and it was very interesting. There is an occult meditation that says, connect all the fragments in life, find the general in the particular. I don't know how many of you follow that. If you really thread all these incidents, you're going to find out that there is an energy working through you. But even that is a glamour, and I will come to that very shortly. So you'll find out that the cutoffs are given in a very interesting manner. They look almost surgical to you, and they are surgical, very painful, very painful. I knew it. I suffered immensely for almost 10 years, if not longer than that. During that time, KPK Garu was behind me throughout, and we were exchanging our notes from our childhood, and Master EK's presence was very, very, very visible in every walk of my life from the year 2005 all the way. How? And this is interesting. If in fact we give, we offer ourselves, which is very difficult to do, and I'm a very realist, I'm a pragmatist. It is very difficult to offer ourselves on the mental plane. It is very easy to put prasadam in front of him. But the offering has to be done on the mental plane, and if we begin to see him in all, his messages will come from all around us. There was one sentence spoken by a gentleman walking this way, and that was exactly the sentence I later spoke on my phone when I was talking to my wife. The messages will come from the people only when we begin to offer ourselves completely. No impediment at all. And the speech of others gives you the clues. And the Master's messages appear through that billboard, which almost accidentally you begin to pay attention. Oops. Right? There was a billboard as I was walking in Kansas in utter desperateness that says, you get what you negotiate, not what you deserve. That became a clue for my next day's meeting in a legal arena. I remember Master E.K. very clearly saying in one of the lectures, this was given more for the Western audience and intellectual audiences than for the crystallized religious minds. I'm a living example of that. Because when in fact I say something, is Bhagavata Rahasya Prakasa, I don't know how many of you follow, please read it. I translate no more than just about 2 or 3 of those things, the master's metaphors. He works through metaphors. His explanation is beautiful with metaphors. I will give you one example. Take a rose flower, cut all the petals, unite them with a rubber band. He calls it unity. Show the rose flower the way it is. That's synergy. This is out of this world. And when I presented it in the context of a scientific lecture in Canada, there was a long line of people waiting at the end of my lecture, wanting to know where I got that from. Right? How can I tell? That's given only in Telugu by a great master whom I don't think you are fortunate enough to know. And then Navanitham was very correct when he said that if people think that, oops, oh, I'm so unfortunate, I did not meet him in person, so I'm not eligible for his touch, I think that's wrong. That's a mistake. I'm an example. That's wrong. In fact, I got Master E.K.'s touch more after he left the physical body through his books. And then I probably now read almost all of his books, and my huge favorite is Spiritual Psychology, on which I spoke to Western audiences, and I spoke as a provost, as a dean. I spoke, in fact, the only places which did not receive them well is when I spoke at Institute of Engineers and a group of psychologists in Delhi. But I think it sprouts in the West so well. And I don't think I need to tell you all of this, but if you really look at the Western lifestyle, we are on a fast track. We are insecure about our jobs. And we are living among a group of people who have an obnoxious sense of freedom, excessive desire for freedom. Our kids, and I have 3 of them from my first wife, that who are now all in their 30s and very productive citizens. They care, they strive, they thrive for freedom, individual freedom. Sometimes we may think that that conflicts with what we believe in. I don't think so. At work, I have met, honestly, more Westerners who would resonate to the teachings of Master E.K. than I met in India. I say that taking the risk of angering probably some of my fellow Indians, because Master E.K. does not belong to any small, narrow, dogmatic sect of people anywhere on the planet. The undercurrent is universal, and you would resonate to that, even if you're a Christian, even if you're a Muslim. I had a Muslim friend, and my friendship is so deep, and his desire to know Master's path is so deep. He was a fellow professor when I was a professor at Kansas State. I remember him taking me once and pulling me into stuff that I had no clue, that I had no knowledge, that I know nothing. And then I ended up saying something which I thought I was making it up. And I came back home. And as always, I don't have the habit of reading from front to the bottom, in spite of the fact I'm a professor. I always pick one master's book, go to the middle somewhere, And then toward the end of the book, that happened to be K.S. Shastri's Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Read volume 4, and in one of the last sections, Master E.K. jovially puts, చాలా మంది సంకలు ఎగరేసుకున్నారు పతంజలి యోగ సూత్రాలు నేర్చేసుకున్నామని చివరికి మిగిలింది కేవలం 4-5. In fact, summer workshops used to be the same way. The number of people used to join with spasmodic enthusiasm, and then in the end, there were very few left, right? So in the K.S. Shastri's Patanjali Yoga Sutras, I found out that what I uttered senselessly, without my knowledge, was exactly there. I never read that in the past. That's an example of allowing Master's energy to flow through you, keeping your personality out. Is popular sentences are so counterintuitive. Be alone, but don't be lonely. Let the work be done, don't do it. And there were so many such stinging comments that he used to do. And he was not a very easy person to follow. I know we all wanted to celebrate, but this is such a great energy. In fact, I remember witnessing very clearly when a person fell on his feet in a corridor once, and I was a silent 14-year-old observer. He got him up and he was literally angry. Rather than falling on my feet, go home and take care of your wife and your children, damn it. It was a very, very, very terse warning sometimes he gives to people to get them out of their laziness. At the same time, he was a motherly love, and you just cannot feel but magnetically attracted to that love. And those tidbits, small sentences here and there, will stick in your memory. And they began sprouting probably from 2005 onward until a point when I said, everything is so remarkably stable in my life, remarkably wonderful and beautiful, remarkable number of cutoffs. In fact, it was quite interesting during the period of cutoffs. It was his will to make sure who was introduced to him. That was a miracle in my life, and I'll tell you how it appears. In my house, which is a fairly large house now, there was a separate meditation room and there was a separate library. And I had Master's pictures, Master CVV and Master EK's pictures throughout, liberally. And I put one in my office too. And hundreds of people visit my office, if not thousands, right? And no more than 2 people ask who those people are in those pictures. I say this very deliberately because please don't ever think the Masters need salesmen in us. They don't need salesmen. They really don't. In fact, I'm not even sure I uttered Master EK except in my meditation room, in my family room, with my family now. I don't think I have uttered Master EK's, Master CV's names anywhere outside at work. But I was never shy to introduce them to anybody, like that Muslim from Iran that I told you about, if I was prompted to respond. I think you know Master is working through you. If, in fact, you feel no, others feel you're so inclusive that they are so comfortable talking to you about anything and everything about any religion or any problem in life. You know that Master is working through you when he gave you some rough cutoffs that are necessary perhaps, and introduced you some new relationships and then working through you. You know Master is working through you if in fact you do not see anything different from a Christian, from a Muslim, from that Tamil missions student, from that other discipline. In fact, Master Ike used to be very emphatic. I wrote in my book, very emphatic, and asking us to read Swami Sri Aurobindo, Ramana Maharshi in particular, Annie Besant, right? Of course, Madame Blavatsky, and Alice Bailey's books. I would strongly urge you all to read Alice Bailey's Discipleship in the New Age books, because there, and I have to resort to Telugu, I'm sorry, those of you who cannot understand Telugu, Master Ike garu ఒకసారి లెక్చర్లో ఇలాగే చెప్పారు, ఇది ఎగ్జాక్ట్ ఫ్రేజ్, ఇంకా ఇలాంటి మెమరీస్కి ఇక పొరపాటు ఉండదు. మాస్టర్ గారు కొంతమంది వెస్టర్న్ స్టూడెంట్స్ ని ఉంగరాల వేలుతో మొట్టికాయ మొట్టి చెప్పిన పాఠాలు అని చెప్పి ఇంట్రడ్యూస్ చేశారు సపర్షిప్ ఇన్ ది న్యూ ఏజ్. అవి there are so many beautiful wonderful pieces of advice that you would find throughout those books for our Western lifestyles. And if we are honest with ourselves, we don't have time to do this. We don't have time to do that. Is the general Western diseased mindset. And Master Ike used to say, being busy is a psychological disease. Being active is being of the art. In spite of the fact that he used to work 18, 19 hours, he's always smiling. No irritation whatsoever. And a lot of people coming and then downloading all their laundry list of their difficulties at their feet. To some, he used to give genuine help. To others who perhaps are not ready for his help, he used to give a really quick instruction, go home and take care of your family kind of things. That is the nature of a true master energy flowing. And then lest we think that we are the most chosen workers for him, please, let's dispel that glamour too. I know of a few Americans. Chuck Smith is one of them in Nevada. He works in very interesting ways, although people never met him, right? Because that energy, that undercurrent is there flowing. The demonstrations, which are the personalities that look the shape of that person, are like a light bulb, like an electric fan, like an AC unit. But the undercurrent is pretty much the same thing. And that is so universal in nature. People, no matter what cult that you belong to, what religion that you belong to, what race you are from, you would resonate to it. Tomorrow, to your Western friend, see Master in him or her, and Master will speak through him or through her. That is his promise. That is experientially true from some of us who are really following for several years. And the other glamour is, in addition to making sure that we don't pretend like we're salespeople to expand his reach, the other glamour is trying to be very, very busy with our individual lives and making sure that we are doing things. I think slowly we recognize that, no, I don't think I'm doing this. I think it's being done. And it could be something in at work, or it could be something at home. You have a plan formed by your lower mind early in the morning, and what is done by the end of the day when you write your evening review is completely different. And I think you should accept that. The Western lifestyle is also control freak, right? We believe in schedules. We believe in this, we believe in that. We think we can control and master everything. And that is counter to the Eastern virtue of let things be done. But at the same time, this is such a difficult injunction to follow. The Master is not asking us to be lazy and be robots so he could program you. No. I think every idea, if we offer ourselves on the mental plane, every idea that is put in your mind is his. And meditating on that sentence itself is of such a great importance that the freshness of that thought will be quietly revealed to you that it did not come from you, but it did come from him. And implement it. Don't question it. I remember some very, very simple things unexpectedly being thrown at me out of the blue, almost coming from a stranger sometimes, almost coming from somebody that you know or you don't know at work or at home in the friend circle. Wouldn't it be good if that happened? Or this is what is happening. And instantly you're given a clue to the crisis of that day, and you are saved. I remember there are too many to indulge in my personal experiences here, but I can tell you in a number of instances how those advisors would be coming in a very unexpected way. Well, they would be expected if you're always in that mood. When somebody asked him, how come you're always so fresh? And you're always in good mood, because I'm always in only one mood. What's his answer? There's only one mood I am, right? And that mood is being used really to send some things my way. So he used to give the analogy of the Quline. That was such a look at, of course, I'm saying this because I'm a professor, but look at the opening thing on the spiritual astrology. These are from higher circles, from whom I follow to those who follow me. That's utter humility. I repeated that once in my professional circle of APLU, American Association for Public Land Grant Universities, consisting primarily of presidents and provosts. When I said that is the symbol of humility, again, there were at least half a dozen people. Where did you get that? So Master Ike did not belong to Andhra, does not belong to India. I'm so sorry to disappoint you. I think it is a universal energy that I have been here for 43 years now. And there is a sense of national pride in me, of course, there's no question about it. And I'm the first one to argue almost violently. I used to, but now I don't argue anymore. The beauty and the gravity and the depth of the ancient wisdom that HPB calls, I lighted my candle there, right? In fact, eventually anyone who is a true truth seeker has to have the light lighted in the east. No question about it. No question about it. It's not a matter of arrogance or pride. That's the way it is. But having said that, it will be a mistake to think that Western culture is something different from Orient. Every human being is programmed to evolve in the end to the same source from which we all came from. No question about it. When we look at that, my personal experience is Master's path is perhaps a very unique path, which let me behave the same way to a white, a black, a yellow, a Muslim, a Christian. And Master speaks through all those voices. And if in fact he chooses you as a conduit, Master uses you to send a benevolent pieces of advice to those around you, regardless of their religious affiliation. And I have tried very hard to make sure that I don't wrap up, even to my Indian friends, I've been very faithful to Master's teachings and the Master's energy. But I wanted to make sure that people who are really benefiting by that do not get unnecessarily attached to the personality or the physique of that person. We are making a mistake if Master EK is that body. We all know that. We're making a huge mistake if Master EK is just limited influence within that sphere. Then he wouldn't be a master, he wouldn't be a universal master. So fast forward to perhaps 3 years ago. I was given quite a bit of inspiration from so many corners, Master KPK including, to start a foundation with my own funding because I'm fairly affluent now, fairly well off. So I created a foundation, and then there were people who were wanted to give funds. I did not say no, which is designed to pretty much westernize. Mold Master's teachings to a Western lifestyle and spread that message in a series of modules: yoga, health, work-life balance, which seems to be the ultimate desire of everybody working in the US, work-life balance, right? So I did that about 3 years back. And now we have the inner living. You can follow YouTube videos on all topics, but just about every video had a saying from Master EK. Master EK used to touch so many different topics, and health being a very, very, very important one, particularly health, work, and his thinking is so profound. And probably I could now imagine why it is being adopted by the Westerners much better than by the Easterners. Things like, remember people, but don't have any opinions on them. Such a difficult thing. That was his saying. Remember people, but don't remember how good or how bad they are. That's an amazing thing. Stress is not in your work, it's in your thinking about your work. Don't think, do it. When I put that YouTube module on that particular element, that I think got just about 52,000 followers on that alone. So the idea here with this foundation is to primarily use the master sayings, such, although they are counterintuitive, but the Western public is very, 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 particularly children. And I'm hoping to end this, and I think so already got 5 minutes, 10 minutes out. I'm hoping that we will exchange these experiences among ourselves. There's so many amazing experiences from so many of you that I heard. Let us be students and teachers at the same time. Because Master EK was that. I know this is a Western way of saying that. I don't mean to offend people when I say, let us be students and teachers at the same time. Master EK said, let me repeat it. From whom I follow, to those who follow me. And Alice Bailey's teachings are immense in saying that, look, Master Jesus, who himself is a student of blah, 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 who himself is a student of blah, blah, blah. That is the real meaning of hierarchy. So the hierarchy doesn't begin with you, doesn't end with you, right? And it did not begin with Master EK or Lord Krishna even. When we think of the continuity of consciousness, you're going to have a great sense of humility. You're going to, unless I'm open right now, in this very moment, to the idea that my experience is only one out of millions of experiences out there, because there was once Master KPK put in my diary, this was in 1990s, Master works in mysterious ways, thousands of ways. Ours is only one of them. I know I know the Miami's brotherhood a bit more closely because I lived in Miami for 10 years. And so we used to exchange our practices, and you'll be surprised how their experiences were quite unique and different from the kind of traditional talk that we tend to have among ourselves in Telugu, right? So that humility, that openness to be inspired by the people around you all the time, anytime, is the master's way, is the master's path. He used to find inspiration in some simple things. We all used to run around and all of that here, and then the sort of senior, older people used to cook, and he used to go there in that corner and play a game with a little kid in Guru Pujas. It was unbelievable once, and I clearly remember this once. He was making Guru Puja preparations, and he was in Ramayana, and he was writing on a board who's going to do what, right? Delegation of it, cooking is this, organizing this, and speakers is this, and all of that. And then there's clearly at the bottom, this is all in Telugu, and he said, Pada Seva, which means somebody who should be there at the chapels, where people leave all the shoes and everything. And nobody raised their hands because everybody wants to be with the master with him inside the hall, right? Nobody raised their hands. And he wrote Pada Seva, Ekkiral Krishnamacharya. And then, of course, a lot of hands raised. So it is the downright, down-to-earth attitudes of doing what it takes. It's demolishing intently, every minute, the crystallized forms of thought, done expertly in a very skillful manner by the master. And that was such a lesson for ages, for lives. And I think sometimes we tend to come from that land of ours with some crystallized thinking, as though we are the only ones who are blessed. And Master took me away from that glamour in a couple of incidents, which are too time consuming to narrate here. One suggestion, if I may give, is in addition to Mandrajalam, which I'm sure many of you read, I read tens of times. It is an amazing work which is supposed to be touching your buddhic plane, not your mental plane. Read, please, spiritual psychology. Spiritual astrology is, of course, another grand, masterwork from him. But spiritual psychology, which is a very small book, I thought that has pretty much all answers in our Western lifestyle. Now we have so many different kind of things that we struggle with from 8 to 5 when we go to work. You will find just about every one of those things addressed in spiritual psychology. The speech, about what thoughts to entertain, about where to align, how to align, about meditating on blue in the morning, orange in the evening, numbers, the key, the nature's keyboard, about the mind. Part of the therapy is in understanding the mind. That itself is a therapy. And how Buddhi stands about mind. These are not esoteric concepts anymore. In fact, the Western world is probably much more ready than the Eastern world. So I think we need to entertain the possibility that this current will go in so many unexpected corners. It has. Master CVV predicted that it is going to start in South America and then it will come back to India, right? So it will go in so many unexpected ways, and we should be alert. We should have our receptors always on and make sure that when there is a signal, you are part of it and make sure that we remove the glamour that we are self-chosen, we are chosen, not self. We're chosen by some grand master to do the work. That itself is another glamour. And master, I could tell in some private examples how clearly he dismantled that kind of glamour. In fact, in one sentence, think about this. This is amazing in Western, particularly for academic people like me. He had a simple sentence: all thought is glamour. When I said that to an American colleague who are the deans and scientists and engineers, they pondered on that. They said, so there is no intellectual property of any kind? And I said, master is implying exactly that, because you're not the owner, you just received it. Albert Einstein said that, Isaac Newton said that. For saying that toward the end of their lives, they were branded as insane people, right? Alice Peddi wrote a book on glamour, world glamour. I don't know how many of you read that. It's a small book. But Master E.K. synthesized that beautifully in one sentence. All thought is glamour. I just thought, no, this thought is received by you. Or I found out, this is a Western, very common thing at a university campus. I found out, no, you didn't find anything. I invented, no. In fact, we started another association parallel to Inner Living Foundation. And I invite all of you to come sometimes to New Mexico. We have Make All Day, and we have a full moon and new moon meditations. There is a parallel association where we started, and this came, believe it or not, from one stanza of Master E.K.'s mantra scripture. In his rendering in English of Bhagavad Gita, he came up with, in the Vishwarupa Sandarsana, Sankaracharya's system of categorization. He had a one poem that he translated, in my view, exclusively for Western public, which is stuck in the glamour of originality and creativity, right? That's what our professors are for. We think we are the best in the world. That's the glamour that we have, and that's also not correct, right? He said that, look, the lords of combustion, right? Who would use that word in Bhagavad Gita? Rudrulu, the lords of combustion. And then in someplace else, in a very remote text, which Sage and Raju now translated into a set of books, he talks about computers. The fact is, he gave a very good picture for West to think that there is a ring past not. The human system has everything that you see outside. In other words, technology is a crude imitation of nature by human being. It's a crude imitation. Now you see all these glamorous words, bio-inspired. We are inspired, right? And that was such a very silly, childish comment to that stanza where the Lord is saying, in me, look at all the lords of combustion. In me, look at the lords of all computerization and all the circulation, cerebrospinal system, all of these things. In fact, the outward technologies ranging from your iPhone to just about everything that you are touching, handling, everything is in you. In fact, the iPhone is made of silicon chip. There's no silicon chip in your mind. Did we ever see that? In fact, Stanford is doing research on that. iPhone is made of silicon chip, which is the worst form of memory storage apparatus. And your mind is a bunch of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. In the organic chemistry, there's no silicon chip there. So we are still scratching the surface. And this artificial intelligence is a joke to some extent, right? Why artificial? Why don't you go for natural? In 1980s, those of us who came here, artificial flavors is such a clamor. Oh, this is artificially flavored. And you know what happened to them? Pretty soon they became natural flavors. Now no flavors. So always remember the dynamics of the knowledge, the dynamics of the exoteric knowledge. Always remember the eternity of the esoteric knowledge. And you'll find out there is a synthesis pretty soon emerging between the East and West. West comes at completely from a different path from how East goes at it. West is like a teenager trying to experiment everything. Oh, you think fire burns? No, I'm not going to believe in that. All right, you first prove it to me. Logic. West overemphasizes logic in the book, Our Heritage. Master E.K. gives an excellent, beautiful explanation of how Western mind thinks, how Easterners think. How is it possible for a person who did not live in this country is what I wonder after living here for 45 years? Right? It's an amazingly accurate. In fact, I read that entire thing at a retreat very recently. This is the difference. If we just understand it, reconcile with it, we can call Westerners our brothers and sisters as well. And then their approach is so beautiful. They find out scientifically all these things, right? A robot, an artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biochemical, biomedical, and all of these things. And then they come to the same conclusion. Oops, they're all in me. So this must be truly a frame of Virat. This must be truly the cosmic person in its passport-sized picture. Then that gives you all of a sudden a beautiful feeling of fusion. Pachima Samanvaya, the reconciliation. Wow, how beautiful this thing is happening. So those are the two sides of the same coin. I think that realization, we are all fortunate for being in the West. And I still think that our lights are lighted there, as Madam HPP puts it, have to be lighted there for us to get that look of unified, the synthesis, the unity. In fact, Master E.K. used to like the word synergy, not unity. Synergy is what you see in the petals of the rose flower. Unity is what you see when you pluck all of them and put them all together with the rubber. Okay, the two are clearly different. And then there were several beautiful metaphors thrown, and we don't have time to touch on them. But I used all the metaphors in my book one at a time, Master E.K.'s, with a Western audience in my mind. And I give those books free, Books of Light and Water of Love. I got 2 copies and anybody could take them. But those are usually, in fact, I make some of our deans and professors read these books because I think that opens up a different dimension of science, different dimension of research, different dimension of, and I'm hesitating to use the word religion because Master E.K. used to warn us, don't think that we are starting another religion here. Don't believe me madly and don't go after me. In fact, see me in your work was his very common popular mantra that he used to repeat time and again. So I leave here with a profound sense of gratitude. Shivaji, thank you for calling me. With a profound sense of brotherhood. And please let us work toward a continuous, constant, joyful, blissful path, which I know is going to be yours, because I did not know only 30 years ago that I would ever be standing up again as a full human being. When there are problems, when there are crises, you think that you're being punished. No, actually, you're being blessed. In fact, only 5 years after some of the disastrous things that happened in my life, I found out why they happened. I found out how I was saved from an otherwise disastrous, even more disastrous situation. This is true, experientially true. How Master CVB wouldn't even let his picture be, it is his will. Let his picture be hung at a place without any purpose. It is true. So let's continue beyond the 100 years. 100 years would help us celebrate Centenary, but 101st year could be equally special. 99th year was special to me too. 98th year was special to me too. In fact, we were enjoying all the way throughout, right? So let's use this as a milestone. And one advice that I would give is please, with families, with little children, I think inspiration is so possible. At a very tender age, I remember I was taking care of 3 children all by myself at one point in my life. And it was amazing to see how Master works beautifully. There is one 2-word phrase. I don't know how many of you would experience it. Please do. Time expanded. What does that mean? In other words, there is another time that's different from physical time. That's the time of your consciousness, right? Time is the span between 2 states of consciousness, is what Master used to say. Space is the span between 2 points. Time, the span between 2 states of consciousness. So to the one with only 1 state of consciousness, there's no time. In fact, you will find out among Master's followers, I know quite a few, they execute so many brilliant, wonderful things in such a short period of time. They write books, they do this thing, they do that, they do this, and they must be our examples. It is a beautiful unity, a sense of family. Those of us who lost it at one point in time and then regained it, know the value of a family, know the value of a community, and know the value of what a cutoff means. Please don't think it's a punishment when you're given a cutoff from your near or dear, or if in fact a surgical operation is necessary, it might be a good thing for us. I know it is a good thing for me. It was a good thing for me, right? So let's share these experiences going forward, wherever we meet, whenever we meet, however frequently or infrequently we meet, and let's see the eternity of the joy and bliss that the Master's energy gives through a personality commonly known as Master AK, through a lot of other personalities through whom Master AK energy is still flowing, will continue to flow forever. Thank you so much.